Thanks, everybody. Oh, thank you so much for clapping. I'm Ricky Camilleri. Welcome to Build, and our next guests are the stars and director of the fantastic new thriller 21 Bridges, where Chadwick Boseman stars as a detective partnered up with Sienna Miller and on the hunt for two cop killers played by Stephan James and Taylor Kitsch. It is directed wonderfully by our other guest, Brian Kirk. Let's take a look at the trailer for 21 Bridges.
If you do wrong, be afraid.
Everybody, please put your hands together for Taylor Kitsch, Stephan James, Sienna Miller, Brian Kirk, and Chadwick Boseman. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Congratulations on this film. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I loved it. I love a good cop movie. We get very few of them nowadays, and we get very few just really good thrillers. Great genre movies. Studios don't really make them at all anymore, it feels like. So how did this start? What made you, I know the Russo brothers are attached as producers, but how did this start for the two of you? How did this relationship begin as a star and director?
You wanna take it?
Well, Joe and Anthony brought the project to me, and I was, immediately fascinated by the kind of clarity of the concept and the moral ambiguity of the landscape and the humanity of the character story. And honestly, Chadwick was the first person we talked about, and one of the joys of the Russos is that they can introduce you to someone like Chadwick. So we met in New York and had a good chat and built it out from there.
And what drew you to this outside of you'd worked with the Russos before?
Well, the conversation I had with Brian made me feel secure that we were doing something that was going to be cool, and that's really all I wanted was, a nice collaboration where we could bring, all of the character work, all of the nuance, all of the colors that I think are in this movie. I think you feel New York. You feel like the angst of New York. You feel, sort of what happens when there's a sense of chaos. That felt good to me, shutting down the city. Things could go wrong. Like, I've been in New York before when things go wrong, and
Everybody goes crazy. We freak out if there's a snowstorm.
There's a certain, but there's also, this thing of New York is its own character in those situations. People respond a certain way, and I think you see that in the cops in this movie. So it was those things that sort of pulled me to it, and I felt like there was a great cast that we could find.
The cast is fantastic. Every face in it is interesting, and from top to bottom, the whole cast.
Yeah, so
including all of you people on stage.
Yeah, you could in the original script, I was like, wow, who's gonna play these roles? I could feel that, and that gets you excited as an actor because every day is gonna be a day where you're, playing with somebody that's gonna be cool.
We'll talk about this relationship right here. Sienna, I don't think I've ever seen you play a cop before. Am I wrong there?
No, you're right. Never
yeah.
played a cop.
As soon as you showed up and you were a detective, I was like, oh, I like this movie a lot. I would never expect this to happen. So how did the two of you come together and become partners on this?
I was Chadwick. I was offered it, which was amazing, and it was really Brian and
you.
Well,
we wanted you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be the natural choice. I was so excited at the idea of playing this woman that was so far from anything I'd done before, and such an interesting character to be a woman in that kind of a male world and what goes into becoming that kind of person. So it was really textured and really deep and also really fun with this extraordinary group of people. So it was a pretty easy decision.
Plus, we sent her some photographs of the wardrobe that she'd get to wear and the look
That was
she'd get
what
to have,
did it.
and she was in.
Yeah. And the hairdo, that nice muddy brown, yeah.
So you went out to Sienna. What of your work had you seen that made you think that she would play a great cop?
Oh, quick, Brian.
Well, I live in London, so I'm super familiar with Sienna over a long period of time. And I remember years ago seeing a movie called The Edge of Love, which was Sienna and Keira Knightley, and thinking, wow, this woman's amazing. And I subsequently watched a ton of her work and seen her on stage. And so I was really intrigued by the idea of taking someone that where the audience have a certain perception of her, but feeling confident that she could deliver something radically different. Because when you look across the range of Sienna's performances, there's a kind of consistent humanity and intelligence, but also a chameleon-like quality, and the possibility of that was really exciting for this movie, and plus the way that having these two guys together, it sort of enlivens the genre.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a completely unexpected duo. Taylor, I don't feel like I've ever seen you play a villain. I mean, we can say that you're a villain, right? I don't know if that's too much of a spoiler. If I did, I did it. I did it.
Definitely.
A couple reprehensible beats in there, maybe one or
Shades
two.
of a villain.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen you play that character before. What was it like getting cast in this part?
Flattering, you know. To be blunt, it was, you know, you read the script and you know the cast attached, and that's self-explanatory. But talking to Kirk about it and him just handing me the reins of where we want to take him and giving me that responsibility is very empowering. And to ground that, you know, and hopefully there is a little bit of empathy for these two guys and this relationship and what that stands for, because that's really everything. I mean, if he called me and he's like, yeah, you kill cops, do you want to do it? Not really, you know, but there.
I actually wasn't sure where that was going.
That's
Sorry.
it. That was it, you know, but it's like if there is that relationship that keeps it afloat, and that the loyalty that my character has to his character is really everything that I tried to bite into. So that's what I did.
Stephan, I feel like you're perfectly cast because you are a man in over his head, and through Beale Street, we've seen that you have the camera sort of just absorbs your, excuse me a minute, your soulful eyes, and you look like an innocent.
Wow. Yes.
You look like an
Yes.
innocent on camera. So no matter what danger you have put yourself into as a character or where your character has gone, we naturally feel empathy and sympathy for you. Talk about this character that you play and that way that
And
you
your
play
eyes.
with her.
Yeah.
God damn it, and those beautiful eyes, man. I mean, what the hell?
I get them from my mama. You know, the first time I read this script, it was exciting to me because I dug all the characters in this film. You know, even though it was this high action sort of thriller, you know, we understood the action of it. I think it was rooted in humanity and character, which was very, very exciting to me. The first time I talked to Kirk, you know, we understood that there was a level of humanity that was going to come out through these characters, even more so Michael, you know, that he was going to be the moral compass of this film in a way. And so just trying to deliver that, you know, trying to deliver things that weren't necessarily on the page. A lot of it's behind the eyes, behind my soulful eyes. So.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't think I've ever complimented a person's eyes on this stage and then had to stare into them while they answered the question to me.
Behind my
I
soulful eyes.
immediately regretted having done it because I was like, oh, I'm sorry, we're just looking at each other's eyes right now.
Some love in the room.
Chadwick, after the success of Black Panther and, of course, Endgame, I feel like you can kind of jump around and do whatever you want, whether you feel that way or not. That may be true. I don't know. What interested you in doing just sort of a down and dirty genre film?
You know, you never know what you want to do until you read it, to be honest with you. And it just felt like for me, I was getting, like, I could see myself playing this before Panther. Like, I never in my wildest dreams saw myself playing Black Panther, and then I saw sort of an image of it, and I was like, oh, okay, and it happened. But training as an actor, like, that's not the first thing that comes to mind, that I'm going to play a superhero one day. Right. You know, but this, to me, felt like, this is Panther, this is Mammoth, this is, you know, there's certain moments where it's things that you always wanted to do when you were training, and now I can do a film like that. You know, I can do a film like the people that I revere. And so because it's one of those movies that we don't see, I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I always dreamed of doing. And so, you know, I think also there's a thing of, you know, putting yourself in the shoes of somebody that you wouldn't normally agree with. And that helps, it helps you to grow. So, you know, playing a cop is not necessarily like, I'm not a person that's always in agreement with things that's happening as far as police and what happens with black people. And so to be able to put myself in those shoes and see, well, why does a cop do this? Why does a cop do that? Why do they respond this way? Like even something as simple as like, you know, they have their aim set on the weapon. You know, if I look over here, I'm gonna turn the weapon over here. That's a totally different mind state. So sometimes when we're wondering why did a cop respond a certain way, I have a better understanding of that now because they're trained to turn their head with the weapon. That focus, I don't agree with the decision necessarily all the time, but I have a better understanding of why, you know, certain decisions are made.
There's also a sense when we meet this character that he may live by a code that we also judge or
He's a samurai.
Yeah, in a way.
He's a samurai. He's his own version of that.
But as the movie progresses, we see that his code is actually much more moral in juxtaposition than a number of the other sort of codes that are within the film.
Yeah, because of his past, you know, because I can give this away. His father, you know, is killed when he's younger. And so there's this sense of trying to get closer to the truth, or trying to get closer to justice. So he puts himself in situations where, you know, he's trigger happy. Or he's called trigger happy because he's closer to the problem. And so there's a misunderstanding about the character. Like, and that's interesting to me, is that you're misunderstood as a cop, and is part of what they live. Really, the whole movie is about the misunderstanding of cops.
I'll talk about the visual look of the film. I said it reminds me in a lot of ways of these sort of very well-budgeted 90s thrillers that we used to get in cop movies that we never get anymore. And one of the ways is that it reminds me of that there isn't a New York City street that isn't wet in the movie, which I personally love. It feels like you guys had the tools to play with to make it.
Gotta have that wet down.
Shiny.
Gotta have
It's
the
so
wet down.
shiny and beautiful, right? Like every light is glistening off a puddle somewhere. So what was it like sort of figuring out the look of the film and how you wanted the evening to be portrayed?
Well, I suppose we wanted to position it on a sort of knife edge between beauty and ugliness that is sort of symptomatic of the human condition in the movie. That we wanted to make something that was kind of a lurid color noir that was dripping with corruption, where you know, it's like watching a fruit ripen to the point of rotting. You know, we wanted to be at exactly that place. And I think
Moral ambiguity to everything in the movie and every character.
Yes, and everyone has their reasons, and everyone thinks they're doing the right thing, and you know, there is nothing as simple as good or evil. For everyone, it's been a journey of 1,000 steps, and I think it's interesting, Chadwick talking about his character, that, you know, you meet him as a boy, then you meet him as a man who is perceived in a certain way, and then he goes home. It's like, here's the boy, here's the public man, here's the private man, and they're all slightly out of sync with each other, but they're all part of the same whole, and I think that's sort of that applied to everyone in the movie, and certainly applied to the visual approach. And it's, as well, we wanted it to be very intimate and raw and emotional and immediate and immersive and in the moment, but we also wanted it to have the scale of the concept of the movie. So that sort of juxtaposition really was what it was built around. And I suppose the other thing is that you go on this story with this man first, and then with these two guys back here. So you're watching two worldviews collide. You know, and you think these two things are polar opposites, but when they collide, you realize they're actually mirror images. And that, for me, is the reason why I wanted to make the movie, is that it's the story of a man who sets out, or who is asked implicitly to kill another man, or to kill two other men, but discovers common humanity with them, and ultimately is prepared to risk his life to save them. And that's kind of beautiful and unusual, and that was the jumping off point.
The way that you're talking about the story of the film is one of the reasons that I really liked the movie, which is that it's called 21 Bridges. It's about shutting down Manhattan, but to a certain degree, all that takes a back seat in service of the story of the characters. We don't suddenly have a set piece on each 21 bridge that leads out of Manhattan. It actually stays really contained and about these people. Was there ever pressure on you guys as filmmakers to sort of find a reason to install some sort of massive bridge set piece that would sort of align with the hook?
The original script had the bridge at the end. Remember that? but nobody was stuck to that. I can't remember anybody ever saying, "Well, we gotta have our big bridge scene." No, it didn't happen.
It wasn't until like the and I hope I'm not giving anything away, but there wasn't until really like the credits rolled where I was kind of like, oh, it wasn't about that at all. It was about all these other things. They were so committed to the character and the story versus the just the sort of marketing hook of the idea, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think the 21 Bridges is, you know, it's essentially the movie's being boxed in, or the characters are being trapped, you know, and so it's just that trap. The first trap is the bridges, and the rest of the traps get smaller and smaller and smaller.
And the other traps are their sort of ideas of themselves and their lives and the metaphor of the trap. Yeah. We could go on and on about the metaphor. Sienna, did you do any research about what it's like for female cops in the NYPD or any PD?
Yeah, we had amazing people who were involved in training us. So Chad and I did SWAT training, weapons training, how to tactically move like a cop, and we had these amazing homicide detectives who were on set with us the whole time, telling me stories about what it would be to be in narcotics, to have risen to a detective status. She would have had to have been undercover for years in drug rings, infiltrating different kind of very shady situations, which would do something to a person. So it was really informative to have them to lean on. A lot of the cops in all of the scenes are real NYPD cops. So everywhere that we went, we were being monitored to make it as authentic as possible, which I think really shows. Plus, they tell great stories when the cameras aren't rolling. It's
Is that mostly what NYPD consultants are there for?
Yeah.
In between setups? Like, tell me about it.
They're like knocked to death.
You need that. You need that.
Yeah.
You know,
Tell me a good drug bust story.
No, well, homicide. I mean, they went
Yeah,
all
of
the
course.
way. Yeah.
Gallows humor.
It was intense, but they're pretty great characters.
But it informed everything from the choice of locations to the firstly from the script to the choice of locations to the way things were photographed to the way these guys moved and handled themselves, and for me, I just felt it kept us honest.
You guys, your characters have tactical training as well, which shows in some of the first shootout scenes. What sort of research or training did you have to do for those scenes?
To be completely honest, we didn't have a whole ton of time. I think that, I don't know about you, but like I got the call about this film like maybe less than 2 weeks before it actually started. So the prep was very, very short. But once we finally got down there, we went to Brooklyn and trained with some of the SWAT there to make sure, because we're ex-military, so we got to make sure that obviously that the weapons training is looking legit. Taylor had done a whole bunch of stuff with weapons, but for me it was like my first time. So to just drop right into the water, firing live rounds on day one, just trying to get us adjusted to what that was going to be like every day on set. That was very, very helpful for sure.
It actually worked amazingly well. Sorry for jumping in, but like these guys had a ton of training. Taylor had extensive past experience, and in the story, the least experienced character is Michael. So there was a great synchronicity to that.
Well, he has experience, right? But he's sort of uncomfortable with his experience in his scenes. Did you want to answer, Taylor? Sorry.
No.
He's a bad boy. Like, for real. He's a bad boy. Like, if it hits the fan, this is the guy you want.
You want Ray?
I'm talking about in real life.
For sure.
I take that as the highest compliment possible.
Chadwick, you're credited as a producer on the film as well. What did your role entail as a producer?
I feel like I've said. Well, basically, I think our collaboration has been like, from the beginning. We talked about script. We talked about things, that would work, in the rewrite, and I feel like in pre-production I was helpful in that space. We talked about cast. It was just, I just wanted to be supportive of Brian in whatever way he needed and whatever his vision was. And if I needed to help him fight a battle, I would do that, And, I would come to set on days when I didn't work. I wouldn't stay all day. because I needed my energy. But I have a producing partner, Logan, who would be there, from the beginning to the end, and he would come home and talk to me about what happened that day. So I tried to be present as much as I could, and even in post, just giving feedback on what I thought of the cut, and try to be a real producer on the film.
Taylor, I saw a mic go up.
Yeah, I mean, you're shooting nights, which I don't really wish on a lot of people.
Right.
It's
Like 5 p.m., 4 p.m.
Yeah,
till 7 in the
5.
morning.
Yeah, you're starting work around 4:30, on camera at 7, in bed at 9 a.m., get up at 2, do it again. And, our 6th day would be second unit, so, you're
work
doing...
there too.
Yeah. And, no, you got to tip the hat to him. He was coming in on his off days where... Shit, if I was producing, I'd be in bed. It's a lot, man, shooting nights. So he was there, and I think the best producers are the ones that are kind of in the background. They just support you and allow you to do your thing, and he was there and present. So you got to tip the hat.
Yes.
We have a question from Twitter. This is for Chadwick. Hi, I'm a huge fan, smiley face. What was it like to be a part of the global phenomenon that was Black Panther, and how has your career changed since? Smiley face.
I mean, it's one of those things that you're never gonna forget. I mean, it's an unbelievable moment to see, because to be honest, like, you can take for granted now that it was gonna work. I think that's the thing, is like, I think from the beginning, Ryan and I knew that there were certain things that we had to do to make sure that it worked. And that anxiety was there within, the company, within Marvel as well, because it had never been done before, And we had to create a world. It's not just a movie with the black superhero. We are creating an entire culture, world. And that was a lot of research, anthropology, history, like it's a lot of research there, and so to see people appreciate that, it's fulfilling, because it wasn't a foregone conclusion that it was going to happen. So I think just an appreciation of that has been amazing. And then as far as my career, like, this is the example of it right now, that we can do this movies that don't get done anymore. The studios don't put their money behind. We're doing one of those movies, and I'm proud of it.
I have to ask, and because I'm curious, hearing you talk about the anthropological research that went into Black Panther and the idea that it hadn't been done and that there was no foregone conclusion that it would work. What have you thought of the last few weeks, the debate of whether started by a sort of random interview that Scorsese gave where he said his feelings about Marvel, and you actually experienced the risk and experienced what it felt like to be in the midst of a kind of Marvel movie that wasn't a sequel, was something that wasn't, like, as you said, a foregone conclusion that would work.
Yeah.
And I apologize so much for the question. I can tell it's been bearing on you.
It's not bearing on me. It's just, the only thing about getting the question is that I think sometimes people think, like, I'm not trying to in any way, talk about Scorsese. I'm only responding to the question because he initiated the conversation.
Yeah, no one wants to beef on Scorsese.
Yeah, Scorsese is one of the greatest directors we've had in the history of film. And I haven't seen his new movie, but I cannot wait.
Rules.
Yeah. So my feeling, is that, one, I don't feel the need, when I hear his statement, to argue for Black Panther, because I know what we did. You know what I'm saying? I know, that if I looked at what his criteria is for cinema, that's what we did, And even down to not just the risk of the film, but the risk of the characters. Like, you're watching our movie. Now I'm defending it. But when you watch our movie, like, you think I'm dead, and you think my character is dead. We don't know what happens to the heart-shaped herb. The culture is at risk. Can there even be any more Black Panthers at a certain point? Like, that's part of the end of the movie. So the whole foundation of our culture is at risk. You know, that's one of his points. So I look at it and I say, well, maybe he didn't watch my movie. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not pointing any blame to anyone. You know, it's maybe he didn't watch it, and I would even say that's sort of normal because it's an in-house conversation. Like he's basically campaigning for an award, right? And as he talks about his movie, he's talking about the state of film right now, the state of making movies. And he has a right to do that, you know. But at the same time, you know, movies change. You know, everything is about fusion. Creativity is about fusing things together. And so superhero movies have a certain, like, I know that Marvel, if you look at Ant-Man, if you look at Thor, if you look at Panther, they found a new way to do each one of these things. That's not the way superhero movies were made years ago. That's creativity. That's art. That's us finding ways to make movies that you didn't think of, and that's why it works. So, but he's a bad man, and you have to listen to what he's saying at the same time, because his wealth of knowledge about film and what he's seeing happening to movies, it also is telling us what we need to do to make sure that things stay. There's like a sanctity of going to the theater and enjoying that while we're in this age when you can just download it or you just stream it. That's important too. So there's a balance there. See, I'm talking both sides because both sides are actually necessary in order for us to really enjoy movies, you know, the best ways.
Yeah. I think his op-ed argued both sides in a lot of ways as well. It was misinterpreted.
This is not a Marvel movie.
Yeah,
My next 3 movies won't be Marvel.
Exactly.
2 movies won't be Marvel movies. So, you know, I'm an actor.
Yeah. A couple more questions. 3 more. What do we got?
Hi, Chadwick.
Yes.
So you stole my question.
Good.
But Chadwick, what was the difference
No, you
between
would not go ask me that question.
No, not about Scorsese, about producing. But what's the physical difference between playing Black Panther and playing this character in 21 Bridges? Was there
You mean as far as the look,
stunt work or action or?
Oh, well, you know, Panther is Marvel movies are stylized martial arts, you know, it's stylized stunt work, you know, it's parkour, it's, you know, it's all those different things, capoeira. This is reality, you know. This is reality. This is how things actually happen, and this is how fast people actually are. This is, you know, we're not jumping from buildings. We don't need green screen to do it. It's the way the real fights happen. You push me, I punch you. Nobody's kicking. You know, that's an entirely different type of reality. So, you know, I don't have to like train like a professional athlete in order to do that. You know, we have to run like one. But that's the difference.
Thank you.
2 more. Hey.
Hey to all of you. So my question's for Stephan. Coming from a show like Degrassi that touched controversial topics, did it help you choose your other roles that you've done that dealt with social issues?
Wow, Degrassi's a throwback. Thank you for that.
I remember you on there, so.
Yeah, I think I've always been sort of selective on the work that I choose to do. Whether you talk about art that reflects life and society, you know, things that speak to something that's bigger than me. And I think, you know, 21 Bridges falls right in line with that. You know, I think it's different than anything I've ever done, but at the core of it, there's still that humanity. There's still that discussion, if you will, that people are having to think and having to question themselves and their own prejudices and the way they think and feel about life. So to have the opportunity to do that in film is always a special thing.
Okay, thank you.
One more.
Hey guys, huge honor to meet you all. Chadwick, you're like a really prolific actor, but a lot of the roles that we know you for, like Thurgood Marshall and Jackie Robinson, James Brown, are real people. And even T'Challa has like that source material of the comic book for you to go back to. So I was wondering, like, as an actor, does your preparation change at all when it's like an original character, when you just have like the page to really work from?
Yeah, I mean, the prep for this movie was just talking to cops and doing, the firearms training and in this particular case, it's being around those real people. And you let your imagination run to places that you probably can't do when there's source material. There's still, the similarity though is that you still have somebody setting a standard. Those cops, those consultants are setting a standard as well that you want to live up to. I mean, last night at the premiere, they came up to me and they were like, "Yeah, we saw us," and that's similar in some ways to Rachel Robinson being happy at the end of 42, but it's different. Like I think every film, even the biopics that I've done, they're not the same exact process. Like Thurgood Marshall, I didn't have to do anything physical. I'm not running around the courtroom. but there's just saying, I wasn't dancing around the courtroom either.
That ended up on the cutting floor.
Yeah, it's like that. But all of them have, every role you do, there's a way in that's unique to that role. Every single role, So you a lot of times you just sort of, what happens for me is part of that happens before I take the role. That's the reason why I decide to do it a lot of times, because it happens. I'm doing something that I don't usually do that the character does, and I'm like, oh, and I connect it. So that's the answer,
Guys, I love 21 Bridges. Congratulations on the film. When can people see it? Is it this Friday, right?
They can see it. It comes out Friday, but they can actually see it Thursday if they want.
That's right.
In
theaters everywhere, right?
Yes.
21 Bridges in theaters everywhere this Thursday and Friday.
There you go.
Everybody give the cast a huge round of applause for being here. Let's hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you.